Okay, we're just getting our technology going. There we go.
All right, we're good. We're good on going live, so we're on.
We're good to go.
Okay.
All right, welcome everybody to our very new and bizarre format for city council meetings. The date is April 14th, 2020, 7 p.m. Just as a precursor to this, so everybody who's calling in, you're in charge of your own mute button. It's good to have yourself muted unless you intend to be speaking. Makes things usually work a little better. If anybody's not good at doing that, Jeremy can mute you and you'll have to intentionally unmute yourself. But we should be okay if everybody tends their own mute. I didn't look at the old minutes to see who was on for prayer, but I'm just going to do that tonight and then followed by the pledge. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity we have to meet as a blending city council. We're thankful for the freedoms that we enjoy and the opportunity we have to be citizen leaders of our community. In this time and circumstances of the world, we pray that Thy Spirit will influence the minds of those people in positions of power and authority who are charged with making such momentous decisions, and that they will be enlightened to the proper course and their hearts will be softened to be able to respond to that intellectual enlightenment. And we pray that we'll be able to make decisions here tonight and throughout our tenure on council and the responsibilities that we have to make things better for the city. We watch out for the needs and concerns of the citizenry. And we say this in His name, Jesus Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Have anybody has any item on the agenda tonight that would warrant a declaration of conflict of interest? Hearing none, we'll move on. Got a moment for open forum. I had one comment that came on my phone that I considered asking the person if they wanted an open forum, but I think I'll bring it up as an information item at the end, and then we'll see where we go from there. I did have one comment that came through email, and if there is anybody watching on the YouTube channel, you have an opportunity. Is it clear to them how to make that comment?
Yeah.
Anything that comes in, we'll give 30 seconds or so at the end of this comment to see if anything comes in, so people have time to let us know if they want to make a comment. So this is from my brother, so I guess there's a declaration of a conflict of interest. To the city council, I represent 20 plus cyclists known as Team Moki. We are in favor of proposed lane striping changes through town that will make it safer for cyclists. There are also several bicycle races that come through town each year that put several hundred cyclists at risk. We would encourage this change, signed David Lang. So that's in for the record, and that will be part of our discussion later. Let's see where we didn't ever have our approval of the. Oh, I skipped it. That's why I crossed it off. Approving the agenda, the minutes, and financial disbursements. I would like to move item 3A up to ahead of the reports, and so our UDOT guys can move on to other activities. If everybody would approve that, and I'd ask for a motion on the minutes or discussion there too.
I had a question on an item, Kim. I'm just wondering what ESSRI is. It says ArcView. It's on page 2, maybe, of the financial disbursements.
I believe that has something to do with the GIS system, correct, Jeremy? It's the Esri that Terry uses.
Yeah, that's our ArcGIS system for mapping our utilities.
Thank you.
Any other
I'll make a
questions?
motion that we accept the consent agenda minutes and financial disbursements.
I'll second it.
Perkins and Shumway, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
I did learn today from state authority that when you're on call-in, every vote is roll call. But I will simply ask if there are any nay, any opposed. I'm gonna call that a roll call. If there's none opposed, then we're all aye, unless somebody wants to abstain. I don't know if that's official, but it is correct, so. So skipping item 3A up to the top there, UDOT Main Street striping plan. Jeremy can introduce this. And if Jared and Robert, if you have any questions for them or if they have any input, they can jump in on that.
Okay, I think we've had some discussion, but it's been quite a while on our request to UDOT. We really had a couple of issues that we were trying to address. One of them is safety at Main and Center Street. The other is safety at 300 South Main Street at the school crosswalk. And then we've also, in addition to that, we're talking about some crosswalks across Main Street in different places. And so we have Jared Beard and Robert Dowell from UDOT here with us, and they put together this, had commissioned this study by Hales Engineering to discuss all of these different possibilities. One of the things that we had asked them to look at was a stoplight at Main and Center Street. We also asked them to look at additional crosswalk signage at 300 South. So I hope everybody at least read the executive summary, but the idea here is we didn't meet the warrants for a stoplight at Main and Center Street, which is how they measure whether it's feasible. They did have some good recommendations, however, for some overhead signage with the overhead assembly at Main and Center Street, so we can put some better signs. This is what the new signs would look like. Edge of the Cedar State Park, USU Blending, a turn to Bluff, 191 would be a little bit more prominent, and some adjustments there to the signage. And they've also recommended what they call a road diet. Let me see if I can quickly find the best explanation for the road diet, which would be taking our road from 4 lanes to 3 lanes through town. So we would have 1 lane of traffic each direction with a turn lane all the way through from 200 north, just north of Maverick, to 500 south at the city park. So they went out, they put some markings on the road, and what we're looking at tonight is whether or not we'd like to do that 3-lane roadway instead of the 4-lane.
There you go, right there, Jeremy.
Is that one you want?
That one, yeah, that shows the existing cross section today with the 4 lanes. And then if you go just beneath that, it shows the 3-lane proposed cross section.
Why don't you go ahead and explain that for us?
And I'd like to jump in though, just a second, and just make a clarification that, there's a little bit of an error in what was requested, what's stated that what was requested by the city. It states that we were requesting a traffic light, and we actually weren't. We said that, but that's not what matches our minutes and our discussion. Is that right, Jeremy?
Logan and I have had some discussion about this. We did approve the letter, but there
With the
was
changes to, that didn't apparently make it in the letter, right?
I think we approved the letter just the way we sent it, but there was some question as to whether we were requesting a stoplight, requesting them to look into a stoplight.
Yeah. So the discussion was that we wanted it to be evaluated. It wasn't the official position of the city that we wanted a stoplight necessarily. It was, we wanted it evaluated though. And that's where we ended with the discussion, which is also in the minutes, but the letter may not reflect what actually happened there. So I just want to make a point of clarification there as to the history of this.
I that's how I read that. That's how I felt that too. a lot of people have favored a stop sign, a stop light. But we just asked for a broad evaluation of the situation and some options for solutions. That when the road died, and we may have a little more discussion on that, but when the 3-lane was initially thrown out months and months ago as a possible idea, I started doing all my driving on Main Street, which is a lot, thinking about how that would affect things. My initial reaction was, ooh, I don't want to give up lanes. It feels like you're going backwards. The more that I drove that and contemplated how it would flow, the more I liked it, partly because you have a wider shoulder and the way we're able to turn into mid-block businesses. There were several things that I started to like about that. And then when the study came out, it kind of shored me up on the idea that might not be a bad idea. But I would say the improvement in the signage alone, with or without a change in the striping, may solve the problem.
So as I understand the benefits, I mean, you can see here for the adjustment right now, currently we have about a 6-foot shoulder, which makes the parking quite tight, especially when you have a wider vehicle, semi-truck or an RV. Then we have the travel lanes. The new adjustment would give an 11-foot shoulder and a 14-foot median in the middle. It would also help with the safety of the kids crossing the street on 300 South, because we would have 2 lanes of traffic instead of 4. So that creates some safety. The downside is we would have one travel lane instead of 2. So there would be times you get behind a slower vehicle and go right around it. I think that's probably the biggest issue. You do see here the capacity. The capacity of the 3-lane is 13 to 18,000 vehicles a day. The 4-lane is 22 to 26,000 vehicles a day. We're currently about 3,200 vehicles a day. So we still have plenty of capacity for the next foreseeable future, even at a 3-lane road. Anything else you wanted to add there, Jared or Robert?
Yeah, I guess if you go to the previous page, Jeremy, it does kind of have some bullet points as to pros and cons of the 3-lane versus the 4-lane. And I think you hit most of them. Safety is our primary concern with the 3-lane section. And when the volumes of traffic are like they are in Blanding, they're fairly low, from between 3,000 and 5,000 vehicles per day, depending on what time of year. With those volumes of traffic, we're really most concerned with improving safety. You know, when in other studies that they've looked at these things, when you go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, we've seen this is an FHWA study, but between 19 and 47% reduction in crashes. And that's primarily because you eliminate a lot of rear end collisions, because now the left turn movements can get out of that travel lane. They can get out of the way. They have their own lane to go into. So there aren't near as many rear end collisions. The other huge safety advantage to me is pedestrians. I'm sure you've all seen the scary situation where someone's waiting to cross the road and you have 2 cars coming together, and one person will see the pedestrian and slow down, and the other one just doesn't see him at all and continues on through. This kind of helps eliminate that situation, because you don't have those 2 cars next to each other and blocking each other's view. So from UDOT's standpoint, it really is primarily safety. It also improves the parking, as you mentioned earlier. Now the doors won't be swinging out into a live lane of traffic. You've got actual room there to park a vehicle. One thing that Robert wanted to mention, if you go down to the following page on the cross sections, right there, it does give you an option, and this is, from my standpoint, completely up to the city. If we go this route, we could stripe a bike lane on the shoulder. Now, Robert, do you want to explain what you showed them?
You bet. The information there on the alternate side treatment is not correct. So I striped it both scenarios. If you saw it there in front of the tire shop, this scenario here with the 14, 12, 11 scenario, and then the one with the bike lane that I striped out there that I marked had a 12-foot median. And I took that extra foot on each side and added it to the shoulder. So we have an 8-foot parking and essentially a 4-foot bike lane, but it says 3 foot with a 1 foot buffer, and we would stripe it with the 1 foot buffer and then a 3 foot gap there, but still gives you that, essentially that 12-foot, 11-foot shoulder there for people to maneuver in and out of that through lane. But you have both scenarios marked out there on your main street.
So one of the things that brings this to light right now is UDOT is planning to do a chip seal project through this section of Main Street this year. So is the appropriate time to restripe things when they re-chip seal. And it would stay that way for approximately 7 years. That's when you have your next chip seal project plan for that same stretch of road. So they're really looking for us to help them make a decision. But am I correct in understanding your recommendation is to do this second scenario, and you don't really have a preference on whether we leave the shoulder 11, 12 feet or whether we put in the bike lane, but your preference is to go to a 3-lane road. Is that correct?
That's correct. We would not use that alternate site treatment as shown in this diagram. We would go with the two scenarios, and yeah, they're very, very similar in nature. A couple other things that from a traffic and safety perspective, the wider shoulder allows us to qualify for overhead mast arms at the school crossing. So instead of having the side mount school crossings, it would give us a wide enough shoulder that actually qualifies us for overhead there.
That's at 300 south?
Yeah, 300, yeah.
And I think we do have.
So I'd like some explanation on that. That seems strange to me that doesn't affect the number of people that would go across the street. There's the potential hazard, but yet the lanes is what dictates whether that type of a signal is warranted. Can you explain that? That seems strange.
It's based on shoulder width. I can't tell you essentially all the logic behind it. Shoulders less than 12 feet, and we would count the 2-foot gutter in ours to give us that, but less than that doesn't qualify. It's on a point basis, and when you have 12 feet or greater shoulder width, then because of the distance from the traveled lane to the side of the road that's the biggest issue there. So when the side of your road's close to the edge of the traveled lane, 6 feet like you have, then they feel like that's close enough, so it doesn't give you that additional point. That's just one of the criteria. But we, in your scenario, if we had the 12 foot, it would, because of the other things that are contributing there, it would qualify you. It's not the only contributing factor, but it is in this case, the critical factor that we're missing.
So that's to say we couldn't have it. We can all sit here and acknowledge that this would be improve the safety, but the answer would be no, we can't have that.
If you left it the way it is, we would work hard to justify it, but it's much easier justified based on the 12-foot shoulder. I wouldn't say we couldn't justify it. I justified it in Salina, and they had 8-foot shoulders there, but with the amount of truck traffic, we were able to, with Robinson's and Barney's using their main street like they do, we were able to justify it based on that. But I mean, we would work that, if you declined the 3-lane, wasn't to say that it couldn't happen. Just saying it would be easier if we had the wider shoulders.
And again, so I understand this process is justified to who? Who's the ultimate say-so here?
Well, there's a policy that we have, and it's our Salt Lake office, Chief of Traffic and Safety, gentleman up there that we, if there's a couple of people that we work through up there on these types of scenarios. to try to justify things outside the realm of what we have. And I would say the same thing similar to, or say the same thing regarding a traffic signal at the existing four-way stop. We were planning on counting that later on this summer when we felt like we were going to get highest traffic volumes to try to justify that. If it didn't qualify and it was the city's desire, we would continue to pursue that. But again, it wouldn't be guaranteed that it could happen.
Okay, so that would be based on more of the feeling that that's the city's desire to have that there.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if the city was opposed to a traffic signal, we probably wouldn't count it. We wouldn't even attempt to count it.
Okay, and that was my comment earlier. I mean, that was just factual in the early discussions, is that we didn't request, the city did not approve requesting one. Is that?
Logan, I'm disagreeing with you. I think that it's something we may have to take to a vote, because I'm open to improve signage, and I just want our residents to be safe. And I don't feel like they're safe right now. So if that means bringing in a traffic light, then that's what I would like to see done. But I'm open to other options as well.
And that's what I'm saying, Cheryl, is that's what we all said before, is if that's what is determined that makes things safer, then yes. But it wasn't that, hey, our objective is a traffic light. Our objective was, hey, we want to look at what would make things safer. That's my point.
You know what? Can I jump in and just add one item with the main intersection there in town? If we go to this 3-lane section, and Jeremy, if you can page down, I think it's down just 1 or 2 pages, there's a figure that kind of shows how that would lay out. It's on page 14. Maybe, well, we've probably gone past it.
It's up above.
It's up above, sorry, page 14. But one of the things that the 3-lane section does is when you come to that intersection, each movement has its own lane. So if you're turning left, right there you go. So if you're turning left, you have a turn pocket to pull into. Everybody knows you're going left. If you're going right, you pull into the right turn pocket. Everybody knows you're going right. If you're going straight through, every movement has its own lane, so you know which direction folks are going. Under the 4-lane section today, it's a little confusing. You're not sure if they're turning left, if they're going straight through, if they're turning right, if they're in the far lane. This kind of cleans up that intersection so you know where folks are going, and it just helps that overall safety factor at the intersection itself. Just a side note, one additional benefit to the 3-lane section.
And I'll point out also that irregardless of whether you get a traffic signal, if this stayed a 4-way stop, this intersection would be upgraded. So instead of having your the current stoplight in the middle of the intersection on wires, there would be 4 mast arms on each corner with luminaires that would extend over the lane that would, show the lights. We have the scenario in Panguitch that's very similar to this, where 89 makes a turn, and that one's been upgraded. We also have in that scenario the overhead cantilever signage preceding the intersection in both directions there, if you were interested in taking a look at that some other time. Yeah, those scenarios there. But that, just wanted to report that we will work on getting that sign or that mast arm in that intersection upgraded, irregardless of whether it's a traffic signal or a 4-way stop condition. It doesn't change the crosswalk situation at all. People would still be, crossing, under the stop condition. Cars would have to be, versus a traffic signal would have a walk signal, would be timed for the pedestrian, and that sort of thing. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Just looking at this drawing here, one thing that I've been noticing, and I used to hold a business right on that corner and watched all kinds of crazy things happen, but when you have a truck northbound making that right-hand turn, especially if they're a 40-foot trailer, they're cutting into that northbound lane a little bit, and then they're sweeping clear out into what is westbound, but heading south. Does the extra width of the shoulder here keep most trucks from sweeping into that left turn lane if they're turning right on that intersection?
We will have to look at that in design. It improves it, but because we have those 3 lanes on the opposite side, the center line's actually shifted over a little bit. We would have to look at that. We've got some tools to use in our design to check turning radiuses for those kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, I've seen truckers there lay on the horn and wave people up because they don't realize he can't go until you get out of the way. It doesn't matter if it's a 4-way stop, he's stuck until you move. And then the next one comes up in their way anyway, and he still can't move. And so,
Yeah, my suspicions are honestly is that northbound movement to eastbound, they will probably be straddling that line with the through and the right, so that they're out a little bit, so they can, if they won't be in that right turn pocket fully. A little bit of them will be, but they know where they need to be to get lined up, so they're not running over a car sitting in the left turn pocket to go southbound.
right.
And we may, I don't know that this takes care of that situation, but we have a similar situation in Salina. Similar situation in Richfield, where Salina went from a 4-way stop to a traffic signal, and there's a lot of trucks that make those turns. It hasn't been without issues, but it doesn't happen very often. Usually it's somebody that isn't paying attention, but
Those right turns are problematic in cities all over the place. Richfield here at our main intersection in town at 300 North and Main Street kind of has a similar issue. They kind of have to straddle that lane to make the right turn without getting into trouble there. So it's kind of a similar issue that you run into in many places, but it's a good point, very good point.
Well, would it be possible to make that westbound traffic have a through or a right turn, through or right, and a left turn, and just put those into 2 lanes and just
and give a little bit more receiving for that north to eastbound? Absolutely. That's
very good
just
point.
knowing how the traffic and landing flows. If you did a survey of everybody who's ever turned right at that intersection when they're westbound, not very many.
right.
And none of the travelers, none of the tourists are turning right there unless they're really abundantly lost. They go straight through, but they don't turn right. So maybe that you could just have a left turn and a through, and it also serves as a right.
Well, those are good points, and I think Robert and I could evaluate that as we look at that, definitely.
Well, it seems like our as far as our council is, I think the signage, personally, I feel like the signage is going to make all the difference. And the other improvements of the 3-lane, which I favor for a number of reasons, that's where I would go. But it's up to us to decide, what request we would like to make. The signage for sure, and whether we want to try to stick with the 4 lanes or go with the 3 that are being recommended, that seems to be our choice.
And I think that's the answer they're looking for tonight, is do you want to stick with the 4 lanes or go to the recommended 3 lanes?
So I forgot to say thanks for being here, gentlemen with UDOT. I don't remember your name, so thanks for being here. So I just want to clarify, because my main concern is 300 South, and I think you've given us some good options there. But I'm still concerned with this 4-way stop at Main Street, because from my experience, and I've lived here all my life, that is the most dangerous spot in town. So you would be adding these overhead signs, which I really like. There at the two black marks, 350 feet away. It would be westbound and southbound. And then what else would you be doing to the four-way stop? Because if someone misses that, I can see benefits to the three-lane travel. I can see negatives to it, but I'm just wondering right there, still the problem is that people miss the signs and then they try and keep going, or they don't see the four-way stop at all. They don't see the stop signs at all. So they just keep going straight, which isn't the right way. And then they panic. So I'm just wondering, what is there other additions that you're going to make to the four-way stop specifically, or that you've recommended?
There is going to be, so like right there at the intersection where we're looking at that existing overhead assembly westbound view, and that arrow goes up to that black line right there. Yes, that will be a mast arm that carries at least into, across that lane where it shows, maybe a little bit further. That will have two red beacons on that flashing. There will be one of those on each corner for each direction of travel. So those red beacons will be what is your flashing stop red to try to alert people to the stop condition. Then on that sign also would be the two assembly signs, that South 191 with the arrow and the Main Street. Those would be, no, not that one, on the upper one. So yeah, that one would be on that sign. And then the northbound view, those two signs would also be there. Again, if you wanted to take the time to do a Google Earth view, a street view of Panguitch, it's similar to what they currently have there. That's why I said, irregardless of whether it's a traffic signal or a four-way stop, that intersection will be upgraded. There will be 4 mast arms, signal poles and mast arms across there, one on each corner with luminaires lights, which you probably already have. But as far as the safety goes for the pedestrian, the advantage of a traffic signal really is when the pedestrian hits the button to cross, they'll wait until it gives them the walk signal, and then it'll hold all of the other traffic, at least the cross traffic. It will hold them until they get across before it turns green for them. So there could be some additional delay at the intersection. However, the safety is typically improved because you don't have, just a stop and then go. They literally wait till, it'll be timed such that they get across, and then it'll give them their green for that cross traffic.
So just to clarify, would the blinking red light that's there now go away and then be replaced by, I guess, blinking red lights on each of these signs?
Yeah, yes, each of these mast arms, yes, these signal, we call them signal pole with mast arms, but it's not a signal head. It's just the two red beacons flashing.
Okay, my question is, how big are these new flashing lights? How big would they be?
They're 12 to 14 inches in diameter.
Yep. And what's the size on the stop signs right now?
Should be probably about 12, I think. They're always bigger than what we think they are.
Yeah.
Would the stop signs coming up from the ground, would those stay there or would those go away? I mean, with the lights, and the stop signs would say.
The stop signs would stay there. If we could share, we'll show you what we had already pulled it up for Panguitch. Can we share our screen?
That would be great, actually.
While you're getting ready to pull that up, Terry Ecker, is that who you said, Jeremy?
Yeah, I have that pulled up, and I think it would be good for everyone to see that.
I believe you can share now, Robert.
You see my screen on yours now?
Yeah.
So this is Panguitch Main Street, and can you see these overhead? This is how it would look. These are the flashing red lights as you come up to the intersection. So at all 4 corners.
And and then there's
I don't see anything.
Yeah, us out here, we don't see it.
All right, let's see here. No, it's wanting me to do something else. Let's try again. How about that?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, there we go.
Can you back up?
Yeah, let me back up as we approach this intersection. Try not to make you sick here. Oh, there we go.
So this is, I wanted to show you, so this is the overhead assembly approaching the intersection.
And sorry, can you just clarify, would this one have a flashing light or
No.
not? Okay.
So this is, as you approach the intersection, you'll have that additional signing that kind of points you to the state park and to Bluff, those directional signs as you approach on this mast arm. And then as you approach the intersection itself, if I can get it to go, oh, this thing, there we go. Oh, it's giving me headaches. It keeps let me jump out and back. Sorry, we'll get it.
Or left.
There we go. Sorry, we'll get there. All right, dropping back down. There we go. So as you approach the intersection, you can see these mast arms, and they have the two flashing red lights over each corner. So that really does kind of brighten it up, and you still will have the stop signs on the side as well. So it's kind of delineated in two different ways so that you kind of get the message wherever you look. And you know, you mentioned, we can certainly look at the most efficient striping. You see here, they've got a shared through left and then a right dedicated. We'd look at the most efficient way to get traffic through at that intersection and still let the trucks make their turning movements and whatnot. But that's overall about what it would look like.
Have you had any feedback from Panguitch? I mean, that looks really similar to us. I like the concept behind it. Have you had feedback?
They, you know, we haven't had any really much feedback, which means it's probably working. Your scenario, I mean, so where the white car is going, that's going southbound. That's actually another state route. So if they go through there, they're not in error. But if this white truck goes straight through, they're on a city street similar to yours. You know, so there's a little bit different things. The right arrow that's directly in front of us, that shoulder, swing to the right a little bit. Can you keep going? I just want to, so that shoulder, they had issues with cars pulling up on the inside because this one's striped wide to allow for trucks to make that turn. But the reality is they still swing wide and end up, in this scenario, there's 4 lanes. And in that, they take up part of that second lane on the other side when they make their right turn. But this is what you would have in the 4-way stop condition versus a traffic signal. They would prefer a traffic signal if we could ever justify it, but we haven't been able to. The traffic volumes aren't high enough here to warrant that yet.
Same situation.
Yeah, same situation.
Okay, thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
You still have a question, Terry?
I do. Robert, this is Terry. My question is, if the city council were to consider the bike lane, that would not negatively impact the evaluation for the overhead school speed limit assembly, would it?
No, that's still considered part of the parking area.
Okay, perfect. So I guess while I'm talking, Mayor and Council, I've reviewed all of this, and my biggest concern is the safety of the school crossing down there on 300 South. And I'm a proponent for the 3-lane highway just to help us meet those warrants and be able to have the overhead school speed limit assembly. I think there's pros and cons, but I think the pros far outweigh the cons considering that specific crossing for the students.
So I have a question on the 3-lane. Does research show that having just a 3-lane, does that slow down traffic? Because we do at times have trouble with people going quite fast on Main Street.
It will eliminate people trying to pass others. And so that typically calms traffic in that regards. I don't know that you guys have that problem here because we have some pretty good passing opportunities approaching your community, but and some straight stretches for people to get around slow moving vehicles and but for example, in Escalante, they are extremely frustrated because when people hit their 4-lane section in town, it just becomes a raceway because people are getting around all the RVs and trying to, before they get to the other end of town, they want to get ahead of everybody. So the 3-lane section really takes care of that scenario. The beauty that you guys have is you've got 4- and 5-lane sections on either end. So I think that's one of the reasons why you don't seem to have the issue that other communities do.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess the question before the council is 3-lane or 4-lane, and if you choose 3-lane, do you want it striped as a bike lane or just left as parking? That's really the question, and I think we'd look for that done by motion.
Jeremy, I have a quick question for you before that. Is at that 4-way there, the road past, so up to like 100 north and then 100 west, those are our streets. Could we extend that the striping up to that block, or is that something that we couldn't do? Is that even helpful? I guess I just know that there's a lot of traffic issues there with the post office and that little strip there.
UDOT does that striping for us, even though those are our streets, for about half a block. So I think that they would extend, and I'm speaking for them, but I think they would extend that striping to the places that they stripe. We don't stripe it. So
okay.
So I was just looking on Google Earth on what we have now, because to be honest, I've driven up there so many times, I forget what it looks like because it all just gets lost. But so we have an arm extending there now, and then we have the 4-way blinking light that I don't think anybody notices anymore. The 4-way blinking light would go away, and you would use the existing arms that are there.
No, they would be replaced with upgraded ones. I don't think those meet our current standards. So they would, I mean, these would be checked out to see, but my anticipation is that there would be four new poles with mast arms. I mean, we aren't going to replace something that's totally adequate, but we have not evaluated those. If those have been any length of time, typically structurally, they have to be upgraded and, improved.
So with the signage stuff, I've heard from multiple people, a couple of different highway patrolmen that, they have issues with the signs on the ground, the ones that we have now. We need them upgraded, but the ones that we have now are covered by trees. I wonder, that should be part of this discussion, is making sure that signs that are there are visible, especially coming in from the east. Those seem like those are covered up. I don't know what we can do about that for sure. Something.
Well, you'll have your big mast arm out over the road.
Well, but yeah, but if we think there's a stop sign there, going forward, it should be one that's seen. So, if it doesn't need to be seen, let's take it out.
Yeah, we're constantly trimming those trees, but they just.
Do we not just take them out though? That's not what we do.
That's We could, that's another discussion.
Well, is it a different discussion?
We
I feel
turned
like
them
that's
way
exactly-
back.
I feel like that's literally this discussion. I don't know why that'd be a different one. Is that not literally what we're talking about? It is. It is.
So my question is, the existing sign that tells you that you're traveling south on 191 or whatever, they seem very small to me, the overhead signs. So would the newer signs be bigger than that?
They would be the white on green with the green background. So they would be different, you know, in terms of the color contrast. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to be bigger than those. I'd like to say yes, they'll be bigger, but I would anticipate. I mean, they'll be big enough that probably 6-inch letters, and we can even look at upsizing them. Typically for a Main Street, we go with those, and I do not know what size your letters are on those existing signs. We recognize that those existing signs aren't very well recognized.
Mm-hmm.
The new one will have the US highway symbol with the 191 in it and the arrow pointing. So it should, to me, it should be more visible and easier to follow because it will have that plaque with the route number and the arrow pointing you in the correct direction right on the mast arm.
And instead of being black and white, it'll be green. And I think that that's
Correct.
very helpful.
Correct. And unfortunately, well, this request has been made by the city probably 5 years ago to upgrade the signage. But we're getting to this point that we don't just upgrade the signage. We need to really fix the situation at the four-way stop. And to me, the mast arms out like we did in Panguitch and Kanab, where we put mast arms, you know, a block or half a block before each intersection helps, you know, communicate to the traveling public that the road turns ahead and that they need to make that turn. You know, there's quite a few other things. And like you mentioned, we do have signage along the side of the road, but a lot of it's obscured by some of the trees and the vegetation, which it just kind of is what it is. But even in Panguitch and Kanab, where they don't have the vegetation, we still went with the overhead signage, and it's a lot more apparent to the traveling public where they need to go.
Thank you. So I will say that I like the idea of the new mast arms, like you were just talking about, the warning and at the four-way stop. And I really think we need to do what it takes to get overhead signage at 300 West. And so even with as much heartburn as it gives me, I do support going down to the 3 lanes because of safety.
And my suggestion would be, you know, these mast arms, which would be a huge improvement. We cut down the trees, you know, and just, if they're in the way, they're in the way. Let's be done with it. And then ask UDOT to do what you can. And it sounds like we're all recognizing that that is an issue at 300 South, and to put something in. Because I'll throw out the example. Let's say we go to whatever scenario justifies getting that put in at 300 South. And then in 7 years or 2 years or whatever, we go back to 4 lanes. I don't think they would take that out. Is that correct, UDOT? I mean, once that overhead was in, that would stay there?
The overhead signage.
He's talking school crossing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
300 South.
once that's approved, it's there unless your elementary school moves or something.
Yeah. So I guess if we're all saying and acknowledging, hey, regardless of the situation, that's a safety issue, because that's what started all of this, is literally all of us being worried about trying to increase the safety. So would ask, you know, I'd like to ask you guys to try to put that in and keep the 4 lanes is such a better way to get the traffic through. And so we get the best of all worlds, I think, if we can get the overhead signage, which includes the 300 South for sure. That's probably, like Terry said, probably the most important thing here, and then keep the 4 lanes. That's my recommendation. Not go as far to make a motion to that now.
to keep 4 lanes
To
and try
keep-
for the
to keep
overhead.
4 lanes and ask UDOT, yeah, and see if they can't put that in. Again, where we're all acknowledging that that is a concern and a need.
I would, I can definitely see benefits to both. I like the wider, I don't know what you call them, where we're considering putting a bike lane. I like that being wider to allow for parking on the street. But I see concerns with our residents. If we just start painting 3 lanes, I think we're gonna have some people who are gonna be upset. I'm wondering if we should allow some sort of public comment on this, hold a public hearing, see if anybody will show up.
What's our, as far as UDOT is concerned, when would they like a request or recommendation from the city?
So our plan is to come through with a chip seal project, the end of May, first part of June. And it'll be fast moving. Once they're there, it'll probably take about a week and they'll be in and out. So it's coming up very quickly, so.
So we could pursue the kind of a public information thing that puts out there the information from this study that lets people know what's being evaluated and try to pool some more information from our citizenry to see how they feel about stuff.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we know by the first part of May, middle to May is the very latest. So that we can have that planned and have that planned into our chip seal program.
So
we have 2 weeks that we can put the information out there and talk to people and gather, get everybody informed the best we can, get the feel of the community on it, and help us in our decision. We could have that to you in a couple of weeks.
I guess my comment would be, if we stay with the 4 lane and the same shoulder width, what guarantee can you guys from UDOT give us that you'll be looking at those arms that go across for the school zones? Because, you were saying it need to be the 11-foot shoulders. If we don't go to that, will you be able to get us those signs still?
While Robert's thinking on that, I just want to put in my 2 cents and I hear comments all the time that 4-way is more effective in getting traffic through. At the traffic volumes that Blanding has, it's 3 lanes just as effective as getting traffic through town. You have a 5-lane section still on either end where folks can pass if they need. The 3-lane will calm traffic slightly in the middle of town so that you've got safer speeds, it's safer for pedestrians all the way through town. I like it for the safety. Like I say, my recommendation is the 3-lane is a safer option all the way around. It gives you a more small town feel and more comfort in town. Now, again, that's like I say, that we're looking for the city's recommendation. I just want to put my recommendation in from UDOT standpoint, from a highway standpoint and a safety standpoint. It will move the traffic just as efficiently, but you get all the added safety benefits and the safer parking benefits.
So in the report on page 16, it does address the overhead school assembly. It does not, if that changes to 12 feet, it does not guarantee that we're still short point wise. He identifies how we can possibly qualify for it, but it would take a little bit of work. I anticipate it would get approved. I'll stop short on saying it will get approved. I think we're optimistic that we can get it approved, especially with the 12-foot shoulder. But again, there's
implicit in that then is that if we left it at 4 lanes, the answer for the overhead arms at the school crossing is almost for sure no.
Well, it's less. It's definitely less. We would attempt to. I mean, I was prepared to argue for that in the 4-lane scenario, and I'm still prepared to support the city's request, but it's a little more challenging.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, I hope you don't get the impression that we're holding you hostage with a 3-lane solution. We're still gonna argue and try and do what's best to improve safety for the town. I think Robert and I agree that we like the 3-lane section. We think for Blanding, it would really improve the feel as you drive through that center part of town. But that said, we're still gonna work with the town to come with these other recommendations to try and make things safer.
Right.
Okay, so let's push the information out to the public and have this part of our next council meeting, 2 weeks with the open, with the public hearing section specifically, if anybody wants to come and comment on it.
And I'll just say, Mayor, too, I'm leaning towards a 3-lane, but it's because I've had a chance to think about it for a while and drive it and consider it. But I really would like to hear, but I've also heard people who are not for it at all. And I'd like them to have a chance to at least speak. And even if they don't, we know that we offered them the opportunity. So I'm leaning towards voting for a 3-way, but I'm also open to sticking with a 4-way if there's benefits to that as well. So.
Well, I personally probably am leaning towards the 3-lane, the bigger shoulders, but let the people say what they need to say.
How do you anticipate a public hearing?
Well, I guess a public hearing doesn't really fly in this environment. We solicit comments based on the information that we're able to provide, and the UDOT report really expresses that quite clearly, and people can consider that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Incubate on it ourselves as well. Okay, are we good on that discussion then?
Yep.
Thank you for all your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2A, Mark's water report. Do we have this director on the phone, or do we just want to glance at it and say any questions?
I'm here, but we can glance at it too. We're having a little bit of runoff come down now. In fact, almost half the water that was up there stored in the snowpack is gone. Well, maybe not quite that much. 0.4. So 40% of the water has melted there at the Snowtail at Camp Jackson anyway. Of course, there'd be less melted on the north sides and more on the south sides. The 4th reservoir is less than a foot to full. The 3rd is full, and we have some water going into Starvation. David tells me that dry wash is filling a little bit, but that water's been kind of slow to start running off out of the dry wash canyon through that new pipeline.
Do we expect recapture to fill?
Yeah, we do expect it to fill. I don't believe it will fill and spill anywhere near the magnitude that it did last year. Hopefully it will fill all the way and spill a little bit. Irrigation season does start tomorrow, and so expect to see water running on fields soon.
Anything else on water? Anyone? Okay, moving on. Chief, we got you there. Police report.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll just give a quick thing. You know, for March, we were up, quite a few cases. We're doing our best to do the social distancing, but we still get called quite a bit to deal with people face to face. In the first part of the social distancing, we were seeing kind of an uptick in domestic assaults. Fortunately, that seems to have tapered off a little bit. Hopefully that'll continue. Cole Palmer is doing his post stuff online right now. He'll have to make a couple trips up north, but we're still proceeding with all the issues we've had there, whole shutting down.
Is Cole writing with people while he's here in town?
He's doing a little bit of writing. He does his online stuff from about 8 to 4, and then he'll do a couple more hours in the evening just to finish out his hours for the week. He's been on a couple of calls, and he's been actually a big asset on one call that he went with me. So he's working out well so far.
Good.
One thing we've noticed is increase in ATV and motorcycle use here in town. A lot of it is not in compliance with the ATV ordinance. We have a lot of speed and no helmet use issues, and then just general transportation being used. A lot of people are driving without a driver's license, which is part of the ordinance. That's about it for our numbers and things. If I can give just one little, my thought on the 3-lane stuff, from a police standpoint, we did as a way to slow down those traffic, the tourists that are busting through town really fast. And if they get hung up behind someone that's doing the speed limit, we're not going to have the people going at 55 plus like we catch on a regular basis. The fastest one I've caught down Main Street is 83. So if we can get those slowed down behind traffic here in town, I think it'd be a huge benefit. So.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because I knew Clay had said he had pulled over people going over 70. Down
Yeah. Yeah. We get a lot of high speed coming through town, and a 3-lane I think would be huge on safety as far as we're concerned. So that's just my little thought.
I have a question for you. What are you able to do as far as law enforcement with this quarantine? What kind of punishments are there? What I understand, people don't go to jail unless it's just absolutely necessary. So how are we doing?
That's kind of been the thing. If we have no other option and they pass all the screening questions, then the jail will accept them.
Right.
But lately it's been, a lot of trying to find somebody that will be responsible for the person until they either sober up or calm down. So it's been a challenge.
Yeah, Rob, are you asking that in relationship to the text message thing that goes out? Is that relationship to that issue?
They canceled that.
Yeah, it's been turned off.
Oh.
Gave up on it. That's what it was. But I don't know. There's a lot of very strange things happening right now. Maybe we'll open in the next meeting an actual discussion item to try to figure out what it all means to us and whether we have any say in any other that's happening. It might not be a bad idea to have the discussion, but we need to make sure we keep it focused on what our actual real parameters really are, and not everything out there. So, okay, anything else for the chief?
No.
I just want to tell the chief that I appreciate how prompt your officers respond to the ATV congregations. They tend to happen around my house for some reason, right next to Main and Center. And there's an officer right there immediately, and I'm grateful that you're protecting the youth of this town.
Yeah, thank you.
That tends to be who's doing it.
Yeah, when we hear them ramping up, we run that way to try and stop it.
I appreciate it.
Anything else for the chief? Hearing none, moving on, rec report.
Okay, we have the rec report. I'd really rather just take questions if you have them. I think we're going to talk a little bit about rec and the wellness center specifically related to the coronavirus in a future item here. But you can see our revenue's down a little bit, of course, with the center being closed. You have the youth volleyball numbers, which we canceled and returned the money for that program. So does anybody have any questions?
If anybody can answer the question, this is the question. When is it going to end? If anybody can answer that question, you need to call all of the world leaders and let them know. It's very frustrating.
I didn't hear what your question was, Mayor.
When will it end?
Oh.
So if you have that answer, call all the people that are making these
decisions and let them know what that answer is.
Jeremy, I have a question about the wellness center.
Sure.
What is our plan to refund members?
I have it on one of my slides.
Oh, okay.
Got great questions.
Is it further down on the agenda and I just didn't see it, or?
Yeah, it's in item E, but we've had
Okay.
we've had mixed response from the community. Some of our community members have wanted to continue paying their membership, and we have some that have requested refunds. So what we've done is we've refunded anyone who's requested a refund.
Awesome.
There's
Okay.
a lot of people who say, I'm happy to continue to pay because I want to continue to support the center. So we have a list and we refunded anyone who's requested it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else on rec? Okay, moving on 3B, stormwater project award. Bidders.
Good.
Is that one under me, Jeremy?
Yes,
Yep.
go ahead.
Well, Jeremy, just scroll through. We have a letter from Case Insurance with Hanson Allen Lewis. We had a bid opening back a week and a half ago. Strangely, we went from 0 bidders to almost 6. We had 5 bids, and then we had a 6th that came in a few minutes late, and so we weren't able to accept that bid. But Jackson Excavation was the low bidder, and their base bid was just, well, $1,399,133, and that was the low bid. We also had an alternate bid that was for HDPE pipe, which isn't the pipe material that we wanted to use on this project, but we felt like we might have to have that alternate in order to stay within budget. Because the one just under 1.4 million is well within our budget, Kaysen is recommending that we award at the concrete pipe price. And if Jeremy scrolls down just a little bit, we'll be able to see the bid summary on that next page. Should have that in your packets. And our bids kind of bounced from that 1.9 down to 1.4, and most of them more in the 1.7 range. So, you always have a little bit of a concern when the low bidder is quite a bit lower. We've talked with the owner of Jackson Excavation. He feels like they can do the project for what they have in it. We've talked to some of their references. They have done quite a bit of work over here recently on the Montezuma Creek Clinic as a subcontractor and on the UNHS clinic here in Blanding with the site utility piping work. And we're hearing good things from all of their references, and we can't see a reason to not recommend awarding to Jackson Excavation. So that's the recommendation both from Hanson Allen Lewis and from staff to recommend the bid to Jackson Excavation in the amount of $1,399,133.
Can I just ask a question that's a little off subject that I don't understand? Why do we have this? I think it's an engineering firm, and if you scroll up, I can remember their name. But why do we have this engineering firm that makes a recommendation to us on who we should determine? Why isn't that you, Terry, making that recommendation? Why is Hanson involved? I guess.
Okay, so they designed the project. They put all the plans and specs together. And then it's just kind of an independent recommendation. So from a contracting and a legal standpoint, even though they're working for us, they're an independent, so to speak, and they give their opinions. And then when we get into the contract with a contractor, if there's a change of conditions, they'll review that independently and make a recommendation on whether the city enter into a change order for either time or additional compensation based on those changes. So they're a little bit of an independent professional.
So it's part of something that we paid them to, I mean, it's something that we've already paid them to do with creating the plans for this project.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll make a motion while I'm at it. Unless there's
I'll
any-
second that.
That
I
was
wanted to second it.
I'll make a motion that we approve the storm drain project bid in the amount of $1,399,133 for Jackson Excavation.
And Katie,
Kate, you're up.
any questions?
I'll second that.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I'll consider that a roll call as unanimous.
Sorry, I have one more question. What did we budget for that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's well within budget. In fact, we're going to be able to go back and reduce our loan amount. Our loan was up to 1.7 million, and we're going to be 1.4 million.
Good.
A little more than that with the engineering and different things, but yeah, we're going to be able to drop it down. We're well within budget.
Okay, moving on, loan payback terms.
All right, this is kind of an interesting thing. 20 plus years ago, when the electric company loaned money to the gas company was in the red and struggling, while people adopted natural gas. So over the years, we have taken a position that whatever money was left in gas at the end of the year would go back to pay the electric company. Our auditors last year let us know that that's not really the way that they want to see it happen. They want to see some actual structured payments so they can see that this thing is going to be paid off. So this is really a term sheet that we'd like to put in place so that we can get the remaining balance, which is $236,115, paid off. An annual interest rate of 1%. We've never charged interest to ourselves yet, but you do need to charge interest. Be a 10-year loan, and you can see the breakdown here. So we pay that back in 2029. We have finished paying all of the other debt that we have to banks. So this is the only remaining debt in our company, and should be able to be covered, no problem. We're paying about $240,000 a year in debt payments, principal interest to the banks, and so this is going to be easily coverable. I think it makes a lot of sense. This is sort of the recommendation that Kim and I have for retiring that debt and makes our auditors happy. So,
What was the original loan amount?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know. It was well over 500,000 at the time.
But we've made these lump payments and we'll pick this up way earlier if we continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Some years we have money left over and some years we don't make anything. So this is, if we have a lot of money left over, you can make a lump payment. I think
the
certainly
auditors have
with,
any heartburn over us making a lump payment if we have a pretty schedule.
no, there's no
So we can
prepayment
pay whatever
to ourselves.
But this will obligate us to that.
We would pay at least the 24,929.51 per year. And we could pay more if we felt like we had more, we would certainly do whatever we wanted. There's no prepayment.
Because I thought I was gonna live long enough to see it paid off in about 2 years from now. Now I don't know if I'll make it to 2020.
For all real purposes, the debt's paid off. This is really moving the money from one of our pockets to another of our pockets.
And we really do need to charge interest?
Or have a structured loan.
So there are new requirements now for borrowing money between enterprise funds, and they do require at least a 1% interest payment. So this is the lowest that we.
Well, if they still allow us to make any lump payment on twos, then I'm fine with meeting the auditor's obligation to do this.
We can redo,
and so we still just pay it off as quick.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we adopt this. I don't know what I need to say for this.
long terms.
The long terms of paying back the electric company from the gas company.
Okay, that's a motion from
Councilmember Shumway, in second.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's Turk, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I'm not hearing Logan Monson. Are you out there, Logan?
I'm here. I unmute myself too late when I say aye, but I'm good.
Well, I heard everybody. That's unanimous. All right, moving on, 2020 water year forecast. Color tier recommendation. Very fancy language.
You want to?
Yeah, we've been, yeah, I can do it. We've been over the water rates and the tiers and the model quite a bit. If there aren't a lot of questions, this is just a little technical memo, a couple pages to kind of show the output from our model. We've got a graph there and we're predicting 1,129 acre feet to run off. And if you get down to the very bottom of those 3 pages, I guess in a nutshell, right in there, yeah, that map below table 3, our existing storage was 2,753 acre feet. Our model is predicting 1,129, and that's the amount of water the city can take. You know, obviously there's going to be a lot more water than that run off, but most of that will go to recapture reservoir. When you add those two together and then subtract our predicted water use based on the allotment, it's kind of an iterative process, but that shows that we would recommend a green year. And so we would ask that the council set our water allotment for this year as green. And I guess what that does is that also sets the water rates that will be assessed to our customers based on the storage we already have and the forecasted runoff and the assumed water use.
So is that done by motion then?
Is that what you're looking for, Jeremy? I believe that's what we want, since it's rates.
Because it does have rates attached, it needs to be done by motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we call it 2020 a green year.
I'll second that.
Kirk and Perkins, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Logan Monson?
Aye, I'm just plugging my computer in.
I'm hearing all the voices and I'm waiting for you. Thank you. Okay, moving on, COVID-19 review and city response. Let's not go too far. Let's keep this within the scope of what Jeremy said. If we want to broaden out this discussion, it would have to be its own agenda item in our next meeting.
So I think the mayor said I'm the only one who gets to talk. That's what I
No,
heard.
not exactly.
Can everyone see that okay if it's in presentation mode?
Looks great.
I just wanted to kind of run over, and before I start, I would say certainly the most affected people in our community are small business owners, and I think we need to recognize that right up front, much more so than the city operations, even though we're going to talk about the things that have been affected. We recognize that certainly some of our small business owners have taken a huge hit in this coronavirus era. So let's just talk about that ahead of time. But as far as the current city operations, I just want to make sure everybody was on the same page. Currently affected, the visitor center is closed. The wellness center is closed. This is getting to Katie's question. Those who have requested refunds, we're processing those with each billing cycle. So as soon as the center opens again, then we'll stop processing those refunds. One thing that we have tried to do is turn the lemons into a lemonade stand. And so we're cleaning. We've done a lot of maintenance at the wellness center, repairing things, painting. They've done quite a bit of painting down there to try to take advantage at least of the time that we have to do some projects that are a little bit easier handled when people aren't in the facility. The city office lobby has been closed, so customers are using online and phone for contact and payments. We still do have in-person meetings by appointment, and that seemed to work well to help keep everybody safe. I talked about it. We canceled volleyball. Those refund checks have been mailed out to everybody, so they should have those. I would recognize that there have been a lot of building projects starting. So we have a lot of people, especially smaller homeowner projects. Somebody's been wanting to do a deck on their backyard or wanting to do a shed. And Brett's been quite busy handling all those questions and small permits. People are using the online permit and inspection program that we implemented. It's not without its challenges. We're still learning. It's still a little bit choppy, but we're figuring it out. And so it's good that we had that available when this came, and we'll keep working on that. I want to talk a little bit about potentially affected things, just to get you thinking a little bit about it. Right now, we are under a state recommendation or directive to be under 10 people in groups. And so that would affect the swimming pool. Right now, we haven't filled the pool. We're just waiting to see what happens. We could fill it and train lifeguards in a few weeks if the 10-person limit is expanded. And I can't tell you when that'll be or if it'll happen in any sort of time frame, but just be aware of that. We really don't want to fill the pool until the time comes, because we don't want to heat it. We don't want to be spending money until we have a reason to be doing that. Baseball and softball are the next youth programs that are coming up. We are taking registrations, and we continue to do that. T-ball and machine pitch usually start the beginning of May, and baseball and softball start the last week in May. So just be aware. We'll continue to watch that and see what happens. And we'll if we can run the programs, we absolutely will. If we can't, we'll refund registrations like we did for volleyball. The last one, and Robert Turk might want to join in on this one, but the 4th of July celebration, I think, is something we need to be thinking ahead about. We've delayed the committee meetings to see when larger gatherings will be allowed. The parade and the park vendors, we can probably go until about June 1st before we have to make a decision on that. We can't really go right up until the 4th of July because it's going to take at least a month to pull that together, and that'd be pushing it. Try to get all our vendors set up, try to get all of our get people doing their parade floats, and try to put a celebration together that way. Some options on the fireworks just to be thinking about. We have 4 different options that I see. We could fire the fireworks as normal because they allow large group gatherings. We could fire them on July 4th, but do some sort of a dispersed residence where we ask people to either stay in their vehicles or watch from their yards. A little bit problematic if people don't follow the recommendation. It could turn on us a little bit. We have the option with the fireworks company to fire them later in the fall if large group gatherings are allowed. So we could put together a fall festival like we did last year and shoot the fireworks then. And our vendor would also allow us to save the fireworks until 2021. So that would sort of be the last option. I would say today there was a conference call with the Lieutenant Governor, and he just stepped out of meetings with the governor. And I would tell you that this last bullet came straight from his mouth. Mass gatherings will be the last thing to come back. They call them super spreader events, and we saw that with Mardi Gras in New Orleans. We saw that on the reservation near Kanta with the large gathering that helped spread the virus there. And so I think if I was guessing, we would see that 10-person relaxed where we could have more people in a group. My personal guess is it's looking really poor to be able to have thousands of people gathered as close together as we do for the 4th of July, for the parade, for fireworks, for the band. But that's just my guess. Like the mayor said, if anyone has a better guess, it's just a guess. So I think that's really all I had. I just kind of wanted to get people thinking about those things and get it out there so that we know what could potentially be effective. Any questions?
It's to be honest, it's breaking my heart about not doing fireworks. I'm sure you all are feeling it too. I think we should find a way to do them on the 4th of July out of respect for our country and our city, but we can address that later. I'm just thinking that I think I've heard that in Bear River, they're allowing some gyms to reopen. And so I just would like Jeremy to see if we can put together some plans, safety plans, cleaning plans, restriction plans on how close people can be together for places like our wellness center when we can reopen that so that we'll be ready. And has our county just followed whatever the state has done, other than, well, actually, I think they have. Have they just kind of followed whatever the state has recommended?
Yeah, the state isn't an order, but it is a directive. And so as far as I understand, in the meetings I've been in, our county hasn't gone any more restrictive than the state. They've pretty well stuck right to that. And that does become the decision of the county health department. And they've pretty well stuck to what the state has recommended.
So the 10-person order is not it's not an order, it's a directive?
Yeah, and there's subtle difference there. I think an order can be enforced with police powers, and a directive is more just asking people to stay to that 10-person or less limit.
Well, knowing the difference there and knowing which is which, if we're to engage any discussion locally about what our options are, that makes all the difference in the world, because if there are directives, then there are law, and we can only make our laws tougher, not more lax. If they're orders, if that's a recommendation, then we can follow that or not within some parameters under the authority of the county, I suppose. Because there's a lot of pressure. I'm getting more and more people asking me all the time about what can the city do to get things rolling, and if nothing else is rolling, would be still won't need money here. But so we need to know what those answers are if we're ever going to engage that discussion.
So by state code, we need to work with our county health department. That's pretty clear in the state code for emergency health declarations, which has been declared by both the county and the state. I would say, I think our health department's done a really good job of working with us. We made some comments early on. We've encouraged them to make decisions based on health and not necessarily politics, because they can go, the politics can wildly swing one way or another. And I would say, from my point of view, they've done a really good job addressing our concerns. And I think that if we work with them, like you said, on safety and cleaning plans and a plan to reopen the wellness center, I'll bet we could come up with a plan that they would be happy with. So I can work with Kirk on that. I think things are settling in a little bit to where he probably has the time to work with us on that now, and I can get back to you on what he says.
Well, and I can speak to that as well. We are currently under a health order, and it goes through the 20th of April. And our next public health meeting is this Thursday, with the intent to make that health order extend beyond April 20th. One thing that I will say about Kirk is that he is deeply passionate about this community. He lives here too. He has a family that's just as affected by these decisions. He has friends that own small businesses, and he agonizes over every decision that he makes. And he was being very pressured by our Northern County residents, the Spanish Valley residents, to follow Southeastern Public Health's orders that closed everything down. And he was very intelligent about it. He looked at both sides, and he researched impacts and things like that. And he waited until there was confirmed cases in San Juan County before he issued an order, because he understands that the economic health of a community is just as vital as the physical health of a community. And so I'm grateful that we're not part of Southeast Utah Health anymore, and that we're able to make those decisions on the ground. But I will also tell you that the legislature has just convened a special session, and one of their main intents is to strip local health departments of that freedom of determining what is best for their local communities, and putting that freedom at the state level. And that's very concerning to me.
So let me ask a clarifying question because I may have misspoke. So the state issued a directive, but our county health department has issued an order. Is that correct, Katie?
That is correct.
And Katie does serve on the county public health board as the city representative. So, okay.
So, I mean, let's talk about this. I mean, let's get down to specifics. I mean, right here locally in the city, who and what are we worried about as far as businesses and what can we do about any of these specific situations? I'd just like to hear from the group about specific things that we feel like are, I don't know, I'm not describing the problems or things that we'd like to try to get rolling, and talk about if we have any options. What are people hearing?
Well, I'll just say that one challenging reality is that this time of year is typically tourist season. And we just, people aren't traveling on a national level because they've been asked not to. And I don't think that we at a city level can affect that. And we shouldn't try to at this point until we see the numbers decreasing. And so that's a challenge. A lot of businesses rely on tourist dollars that come through in April, May, and June. And right now, that's not happening.
Yeah, and we definitely can't affect that. That's for sure out of our control. I mean, I know, we don't have a lot of restaurants, but restaurants on the list of getting hammered by this. Are there any other specific businesses? I mean, we should be able to name them all because there's
Restaurants, lodging, and C-stores. I mean, the places that you go when you're traveling, they're not going to survive.
I mean, because all the other stores in town are open. I mean, it's not like we've shut down, pharmacies, flower shops, things like that, right? Flower shop issue.
By virtue of the fact that nobody can go to a funeral.
So
it's not shut down. It's
the government has it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm just trying to get a feel from everybody, because we got a wide net here. Finding out what is shut down.
It's very specifically the travel related businesses.
So is there anything that we can do for the restaurants, those that are affected, to help that out? I'm not.
We've been doing a lot of encouragement to have people, take out, and I think they've done that for the most part. It doesn't make up for the losses they suffer because there's just so many less people than they expect. But I think we've done a pretty good job as a city for people to do what they can. But I kind of agree with you.
I guess the question for Katie, in working with Kirk on some of this stuff, and this is a philosophical question. The medical people are qualified to whatever extent to make recommendations on the medical situation, but they have zero experience and expertise on the economic impacts and effects of that, and what the long-term effects of that could be exponentially more damaging than, and so are there people in the county level that are working with Kirk that understand economic impacts?
So to speak to that, Kirk sent me an article this week directly about that. And it had to do with, I mean, the last time we've had a major pandemic like this was the Spanish flu. And the article talked about two twin cities that were just across the river in the south. I don't remember, I don't know where the email is because I've gotten so many emails this week from him, but essentially one city chose to do nothing about the flu and the other city chose to take drastic measures into social distance. And the city that took the drastic measures, actually their economy recovered much faster than the city that chose not to. And that partially had to do with that the city that chose not to, the breadwinners of the family tended to be who passed away. And so then they didn't have, there were families that were left without financial support versus the other city where they were able to preserve the people that could start businesses back up and things. It's an interesting article. It did come from the New Yorker, I think, and so I don't know. I don't love that source as much, but If I can find it, I'll forward it to you.
That is a good question. I mean, who is the, there are health experts there at the health department. Are there economic experts, I guess? I mean, I'm guessing the answer is no, but it's a question.
I would say there aren't necessarily economic experts, but they like I said, any epidemiologist or healthcare director recognizes that public health is multifaceted and that a healthy economy is vital to community health. And so when they make decisions, they really do try to say, how is this going to affect the economy? But this is all uncharted territory.
Is this, so I'm comfortable with that discussion that's been right here.
Yep.
To extend it beyond this much to as far as what we can possibly do, we probably, if we wanted to extend this discussion to the next meeting and see where we are at that point, maybe have some more answers to what options actually exist and what expertise we can bring to bear on that discussion. I don't know, I've had business owners that we just need to open Blanding up, like open them up for who? I was on Highway 95 for 2.5 hours on Sunday afternoon, and I saw one vehicle other than myself. Open the motels, okay, still nobody's coming. So we have very little control over what's happening out here. We need to figure out what we do have control over and try to get the most intelligent, educated response to what we might be able to do to help.
The only thing, sorry, Jeremy, the only thing I can think of is us asking, requesting. I'm not saying I think we should do this, but this is an option without in restaurant dining. Yeah, there won't be all these outside people, but that still might be
At
something.
every other table. I mean,
Yeah.
what can be opened up to?
That's something that could be done. We could ask for that from the health department. So I'll throw that out there for next time.
Yeah, let's explore the ideas. Let's come with a lot of questions and hopefully we can answer those and find some avenue that can try to help in whatever way we're able to. Jeremy?
We would just need to add whatever we can do legally, which isn't much. I mean, you were right. We can ask, we can request, we can ask questions. In the end, we could talk to Kendall a little bit, but it's not really our choice. We can ask.
Yeah, and along those, I mean, I think I'd be in favor of us asking for allowing the restaurants to be able to see in, whatever you want to term it, but people could go in and eat. I mean, I don't know why that's different than lots of the other stores that are still allowed to be able to be gone into. So that would be my reasoning on that.
And the Lieutenant Governor spoke to that today, and I think the states that we have are saying the private sector can figure that out. We don't have to do that for them. We just have to give them the parameters and say, can you safely keep people 6 feet apart? And they'll figure out how to do it, right? They'll remove tables, they'll do what they need to do, they'll put people at every other table. And if the state can relax that, they'll find ways to work, just like Cheryl was talking about with our wellness.
Yeah, is that something we want to talk about tonight at all?
Well, and I just want to say, Logan, I get where you're going with this because we don't have, we can't control visitors, obviously. And the problem is we don't have an influx of thousands of people, even if we start to put people back to work or open things up that are going to revitalize our economy as fast as bigger areas do, which is why the longer we're closed, the harder it is on our businesses. And I think even small things like that, Logan, like what you just recommended, helps people in the community to see we're open and we can do this safely, and you can go to these businesses safely. We saw Pop's Burritos shut down. We saw most of the hair salons shut down, even though they didn't have to. I think that people were just afraid. They were afraid of all the announcements and they shut down. But if we do small things like that, I think it helps people to see, let's take these small steps to start visiting our businesses again. But even small announcements make a big difference because it starts to help with the comfort level that people feel to go back into the community again. And Anyways, I think it's an extremely valid discussion to have about what role we can play in those kind of things.
I mean, Pop's Burritos is a good example. I mean, if you're not set up to do drive-through or things like that, you might just not be very amenable to that type of business with your current setup, and you're SOL.
Even if you could, yeah, in their case, even if you could allow people to go in and order and take.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't affect a lot of people, but it affects a few people very, very drastically. And I think it's worth having a discussion, I guess, tonight, because it is so important to a few people.
Well, but I will remind you that we did not have a public health order locally that closed the restaurants. The governor closed restaurants to in-restaurant dining.
So
And-
this was done through
Was that
order.
an order?
Yeah.
That one was an order. So those are the things we need to clarify, so we know what are our parameters.
They recently lifted that where people could go in, and myself and then Rick and Ronnie Neves all made visits, and no one has implemented that yet except Subway, I think, started last night.
Allowing people to go inside.
So
Everybody else is
it's
voluntarily.
been lifted for at least 7 days, but
And I know Subway was really concerned. I mean, it goes to Cheryl's comment. I mean, a lot of people are doing this out of their own choice because they're concerned about the employees, they're concerned about the patrons who come and patronize their business. So it's a little more complicated than.
There's so many things that don't make sense, and Subway is a prime example. Subway's closed, has been, but the hardware store is open. And the interactions, there's no difference. And so what, I don't know. I get lost in
But on
this.
that specific thing of allowing restaurants to have people inside, you're saying that's like that's already allowed. They can do
They
that.
just can't eat in the restaurant.
Oh,
There has to be
yours would be one more step where they could actually sit down. Right now, they have to
okay.
leave.
Is that from the state? That's from the state. Well,
We need to make sure people know that.
I don't know. I mean,
But they'll
it probably
change
doesn't
tomorrow.
affect things, but, I would support, us saying as a council that we recommend to our local health department that they would like to see that, and that's important for people here. Don't know that that changes anything, but at least it's doing what we can do, because I think that would help. I mean, if I can't go sit down and eat, I'm less likely to go somewhere. So, anyways.
I'm having a hard time hearing the conversation, but I like what I saw on social media where we were promoting going to the different restaurants through the drive-through and stuff, show the picture of the food you purchased. And I made it a point to try to go to every restaurant numerous times since this has been shut down. We need to show people we're open for business. But I think also another thing, and this just may be me, that when we have these city council meetings, we gotta all be in that chamber. We can spread 6 feet apart because I don't know, it's kind of a message. We can't meet together, but we want people to go to the stores. I think we gotta meet together and keep under that 10-person minimum. We can spread out, but I think that shows something too, that we're trying to have business as usual.
And I agree. And even reopening our city office, Jeremy, I think at some point we need to be prepared to do that. There's not more than 10 people that come in there at one time. And even if there is, you can control the number of people that come in there. So I think all those small things are really important.
But I think we also need to be careful about protecting our city employees. And we don't have the right type of protective equipment for our front desk people. If someone were to come in infected, then we would be in trouble if we lost even one city employee to the virus, or if they all got sick, because we already
And I would say that
run.
about Red's Ace Hardware. I would say that about everybody, everywhere in town. I agree. And I'm not saying do it. I think we need to do it with precautions. Jeremy, if you want them to wear a mask, wear a mask. But I think shutting down the city office says a lot about what our stance is as a city council. And so Katie, I completely agree. It needs to be done carefully, but I think we can do it with the right precautions with cleaning and supplies. And I'm not saying we do it right now, but I think it's something that we need to consider.
I see what you're saying in the future, but I can tell you right now, I tried to order masks for the school and they sent me a box of 30, and I need way more than that. And that was 2 weeks ago. And they sent me a single bottle of hand sanitizer, and I need hand sanitizers in every school. And we're at a point where the lunch ladies don't have the protective equipment they need. The bus drivers don't, because those are being funneled to harder hit areas. And so I just have concern about if we can follow the suggestions and try to work from home, and wait until we get over the curve. We're almost there. I think we're almost there, but if we open everything up too soon, then we run the risk of overrunning our healthcare system. And that is what we've been trying to avoid in this last month.
And I can certainly appreciate that. In fact, that leads me to a question, Katie, that maybe you guys have discussed. And Mayor, I'm sorry, I know you don't want to go too far off topic, but if nobody in Blanding has gotten this, how do we expect to ever get out back into the public safely? I mean, have you guys had those discussions? Nobody in Blanding and Monticello has been diagnosed. So when are we supposed to be able to open?
Well, so the challenge right now is a lack of testing. They'll only test if you have 3 or 4 symptoms, I believe. And that's part of why Utah Navajo Health is doing their big ramp up and testing people that even have 1 symptom in areas that we already know there's the virus, because that will give us a better idea. But I think that's a big part of the challenge, is that we don't really have all the data.
Can I jump in here and speak to the front office and opening things up, since I'm in the front office every day? It's hard. It's hard not to have people coming through that door, but in reality, I think we're helping people stay home. We're taking lots of payments over the phone. We're taking payments in the Dropbox. We're letting people know when they call that they can make their payments by phone, and that they can leave it in the Dropbox, and they can mail it in. And I have actually had people say, oh, I didn't know we could do that. That will be so good that we can do that. So even though they're not coming in the door, I think we're helping them stay safe also, not just us in the office, but the people needing to make those payments. I've had people come in before we close the front office with masks and gloves and the whole thing, because they have fear. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, we have the doors shut, but I think in reality, we are protecting them too, not just us behind the door. And it is working. It's working quite well.
Well, it's working so well. We don't have anybody with any cases. And let me just clarify. I'm not saying that we should do this right now. I'm saying that it's something that we should prepare for, so that, and this is my opinion, this is not all the council members' opinions, but something that we're prepared for, so that we as a city can begin to say, okay, we're back open. We're open again. And here's the steps that we're taking, so that people start to feel like they can go out again, and we can start to, get people to visit our businesses and go out again. And I'm not saying that's tomorrow, and I'm not saying that's next week, but I think it's something that we need to consider in the next few weeks as we see the progress throughout the state.
I agree with Cheryl's sentiment completely. I mean, we need to be, let's not do anything rash, but let's be anxious to open things up. That is the goal, and let's be planning on and hoping to get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. That seems to be kind of where everybody is. And so if we're in that mode, and we're looking for whatever opportunities and whatever advice and information into the next meeting, then, then we can, any steps that are available to us, we can look at taking.
Well, I've put out there that, the next meeting is hopefully we're setting a date for opening things up. That's what we're looking towards,
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah, that's our hope.
All right.
Agree.
Okay. Well, we'll see where we are in a couple of weeks. Maybe things will change dramatically one way or the other. Anything else on that? So county commission review.
I think everybody's more or less aware of this, but I just wanted to make sure the last county commission meeting that happened last week, the biggest issue that affected us is the county commission put forward a resolution to cancel the interlocal agreements with all 3 communities, which caused quite a bit of concern from all the communities, because the interlocal agreements aren't just what the county does for us, but they're what we do for them. They're mutual aid. For instance, we handle fire protection for a good chunk of the county. So once we helped the county to understand that, they changed the wording, that they're still looking to renegotiate those, but they didn't cancel all of them. So I think that was probably the biggest issue. It took a little bit of mobilization on the part of the city, because it was a little bit hard to find that action they were going to take from what they put out there. But I think it's just worth noting that there is a lot of interest at the county level. They have a lot of financial issues. I don't think it's out of line to say that, and they're looking for ways to cut their budgets. We just have to make sure that we keep those mutual aid agreements in place, so that we're not providing services that aren't being provided back to us. So I don't know if you had anything to share on that, Cheryl. Cheryl was listening in on that.
No, I think that was great. And I think they did a good job of addressing it and trying to keep the cities calm. So
from our perspective, we have 8 years left on our interlocal agreement, and it cannot be unilaterally canceled, but they are looking to renegotiate some of the things. And I think if we choose to look at that, we would look at it from a this year only kind of basis. We would say, okay, this year, because of the financial issues and the coronavirus, we're willing to do X or Y, but we're not willing to give it up for the next 8 years. Some of those things are things that we've worked really hard to negotiate with the county over the years, and I just don't think it makes sense to give them up permanently. But we certainly understand the position they're in, because we're all county taxpayers, and we need to work with them too.
I will kudos to Jeremy for recognizing that was in there, because I had glanced over that and I didn't pick that out. And I know that Cheryl got involved with some discussion with some of them. I wrote a couple of letters really explaining that doing this doesn't help you cut your budget. You're going to have to expand your budget dramatically to cover the expenses that Blanding City is covering, and we would also have to expand our budget to cover those that you're providing. Everybody loses. It was a no-brainer if you understand why they exist, and so they didn't have much comprehension of what they were getting in return for what they were getting. And so that probably helped a lot to have the county understand better how that relationship works and that all the taxpayers benefit. If I had mentioned that I had something maybe for on information, but it was kind of already mentioned in the discussion on the virus. So, is there any other information items? Anybody?
One thing that we didn't discuss on the virus is Jeremy and Kim is the budget. And as you may have seen, the county came out and said, no more unnecessary spending. You can't spend any money unless it is critical to operations. And thank goodness we're not in a position that we have to do that. But I'm assuming that you two are both monitoring the budget, and you will let us know if we need to make cuts anywhere.
Yeah, I'll speak for Kim. We change it weekly, the proposed budget. So there's one benefit that we are putting our budget together now, and the county had to put theirs together in November. That's a good and a bad. I mean, it changes weekly. So we were on a call just a couple of days ago with all the finance directors in the state. I know the Kim C. Gardner Institute at the University of Utah has done a lot of work. Our biggest question is, what kind of sales tax hit are we going to see? And so we're revising that all the time. But yeah, I would say Blanding City's been very conservative. We've been careful. We've lived within our means. We've saved our money when it wasn't raining. And so we're in good financial position, but we want to be careful. We want to continue that. So we'll have some stuff for you hopefully by the end of next week. We should have a proposed budget, and our meeting was scheduled for the 1st of May on a Saturday. And it sounds like the council has some idea that they would be happy to come. We could spread this council room out and have people in different areas and keep our distancing and have that work session. So we'll kind kind of push towards that.
In consideration of the budget at all times, but especially right now, where some of the funding is going to be questionable, we don't know where we're at. What I'd like everybody to consider is the hierarchy of priorities. And this is kind of hard to do because some things are paid for out of one pool of money and some things are paid for out of another pool. But if we consider our hierarchy of priorities, what is our number one priority? What is number two? What is number three? So if we get to a position where we're having to really consider, really slicing and dicing, it's less of a political issue because we have established what is the very most important. And we know where the cuts will come from the bottom of that list for the least important to the most important. We need to consider what those things are before the time comes to make the cuts. If it comes. If we get to that time, then it's emotional. And it's a lot harder to be objective, but right now it can be objective.
And the key is to keep flexibility. And I think that's the key. And we have a flexible budget. We have a lot of flexibility because of past choices. So we want to keep ourselves really flexible and able to make adjustments.
Okay, anything else? Pretty quiet out there.
I'll make. So where are we at on this agenda at the end? I'll make
Do
a
it,
motion.
make a motion.
We adjourn then.
I'll second that motion.
Vicky, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good work, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Come in your full hazmat gear and we'll meet together.
Thank you.